Welcome back to the channel, USA Coins 69, where we explore the hidden gems of the coin collecting world. Today, we are turning our attention to one of the most collected and fascinating coins in American history, the Lincoln 1-cent penny from the year 1981. Now, you might think of pennies as ordinary coins that barely hold any value in your pocket, but when it comes to rare mint marks, special conditions, and collector demand, even a simple penny can turn into something extraordinary. This is not just any story about copper and zinc, it's a journey through history, design, and rarity that makes the 1981 Lincoln penny a true treasure for coin enthusiasts around the world. Let's begin by stepping back into the early 1980s. The United States was going through a period of transition, politically, socially, and even in the world of currency. Inflation had already changed the way people looked at money, and the cost of producing pennies was rising rapidly. For many decades, pennies were struck mostly in copper, but by the late 1970s and early 1980s, copper prices soared. This led the United States Mint to experiment with cheaper alternatives, and by 1982, the penny would no longer be made primarily of copper but instead of copper-plated zinc. That makes the 1981 issue particularly significant, because it represents one of the very last years before this major shift took place. In other words, the 1981 penny stands as one of the last in the proud era of mostly copper composition. Now let's look at the coin itself. On the front side of the penny, you'll find the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Sculpted by Victor David Brenner, this design first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. By 1981, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for over 70 years, becoming one of the most recognized coins in the world. Brenner's portrait shows Lincoln facing right, with great detail and dignity, symbolizing leadership and freedom. The inscriptions include, "In God We Trust," at the top, "Liberty," to the left, and the date of minting, 1981, along with its mint mark, placed to the right. That little mint mark is more important than most people realize, because it tells collectors where the coin was produced: Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the reverse design that had been in use since 1959, created by Frank Gasparo. Instead of the wheat ears that graced earlier pennies, the design shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And if you look closely with a magnifying glass, you can even see a tiny engraving of Abraham Lincoln seated inside the memorial. It's the only circulating U.S. coin that features the same person on both the obverse and the reverse, an incredible detail many people never notice. Surrounding the memorial are the inscriptions "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum," along with the denomination 1 cent at the bottom. But what makes the 1981 Lincoln penny so special in the eyes of collectors is not just its design or its history, it's the rarity of certain examples. The majority of pennies from 1981 were struck in massive numbers, but only a small percentage have survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. Pennies are small coins, easily scratched, dented, or worn down from years of circulation. Finding one in gem mint state, with sharp details, strong luster, and no visible flaws, is a real challenge. And as collectors know, condition is everything when it comes to value. A common coin in poor condition may only be worth a cent, but the same coin in nearly perfect condition can be worth hundreds, thousands, or even more. Another factor that boosts the 1981 penny's value is the mint mark. Coins struck at different mints can carry different levels of rarity. For example, some mint marks are scarcer in high-grade condition than others. Proof versions, struck with extra care at the San Francisco Mint, are also highly desirable when preserved in their original state. Add to that the fact that the 1981 issue marks the end of an era just before the composition change, and you've got a recipe for a truly collectible piece of American history. Collectors are always on the hunt for hidden treasures, and pennies like the 1981 Lincoln cent fuel that excitement. Stories circulate about people who discovered an old jar of change, only to realize that a simple penny was worth far more than they imagined. That thrill of the hunt is what makes coin collecting such a fascinating hobby. Every coin tells a story, every detail matters, and sometimes the most ordinary coin can hold extraordinary value. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating story of one of America's most beloved coins, the Lincoln 1-cent penny from the year 1976. Now, when most people hear 1976, their minds immediately jump to the bicentennial celebrations of the United States. It was a year full of history, patriotism, and national pride, and while quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins carried special bicentennial designs, the humble Lincoln penny quietly continued its role in everyday commerce. Yet, within that simplicity lies something remarkable, because the 1976 Lincoln cent is far more than just a common coin. It can, under the right circumstances, become an extraordinary treasure. Let's first picture America in 1976. The nation was celebrating its 200th birthday. Fireworks lit the skies, parades filled the streets, and special commemorative items were everywhere. The U.S. Mint released unique designs on larger coins to honor the bicentennial, but interestingly, the penny was not given a new design. Instead, it retained its classic look, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. To many collectors, this continuity is fascinating because while the rest of the nation was focused on change and celebration, the penny remained a quiet symbol of tradition, linking America's founding principles to its enduring everyday life. The obverse of the 1976 penny still featured the enduring design by Victor David Brenner, first introduced back in 1909. Lincoln's profile, facing right, had already become one of the most familiar portraits on American coinage, representing leadership, humility, and resilience. Above his head, the motto, "In God We Trust," stands proudly, while the word "Liberty" sits to the left. The year 1976 is stamped clearly on the right, and just beside it, you'll notice the mint mark, those tiny letters that tell us where the coin was struck. Whether it's a D for Denver, an S for San Francisco, or the absence of a mark for Philadelphia, that little detail can make a big difference in value. Turning to the reverse, we see Frank Gasparo's rendering of the Lincoln Memorial. Introduced in 1959 to replace the wheat ears design, this depiction of the Grand Monument in Washington, D.C. serves as a reminder of Lincoln's place in American history. Look closely, and you can actually spot a miniature Lincoln seated inside the memorial, making the penny one of the only U.S. coins to show the same figure on both sides. Surrounding the memorial are the inscriptions, "United States of America," the guiding phrase, "E pluribus unum," and, of course, 1 cent at the bottom. It's simple, elegant, and deeply symbolic. Now, you may be wondering, if the design is the same as previous years, what makes the 1976 penny so interesting to collectors? The answer lies in rarity, condition, and demand. Millions upon millions of these coins were minted for circulation, but the vast majority have been handled, spent, and worn down over the decades. Pennies are small, easily scratched, and prone to damage from circulation. Finding one today that has survived in flawless, uncirculated condition, with sharp details and brilliant luster, is incredibly difficult. And as collectors know well, condition can turn an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Beyond condition, mint marks also play a critical role. Pennies from different mints can carry varying degrees of scarcity, and proof coins from the San Francisco Mint are particularly prized when preserved with care. Even the smallest difference in strike quality or clarity can significantly impact how much collectors are willing to pay. Add to this the fact that 1976 was such an important year in American history, and suddenly this little coin takes on a much larger significance. It becomes a tangible piece of the bicentennial era, connecting everyday pocket change to a moment of national pride. Another exciting aspect for collectors is the possibility of unique errors or varieties. During minting, mistakes can happen: a doubled die, an off-center strike, or a variation in the metal composition. These anomalies make a coin unique, and collectors love the thrill of owning something one of a kind. A small flaw to the mint can be a huge opportunity to collectors, and certain error pennies from this era can reach incredible prices when they come to auction. Stories abound of people discovering rare pennies in old jars, drawers, or inherited collections. What seemed like an ordinary cent turned out to be worth thousands, simply because of its mint mark, condition, or unique characteristics. That is the magic of coin collecting. You never truly know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. The 1976 penny is a perfect example of this, because while millions of people use them daily without a second thought, only a very few were preserved in such remarkable condition that they would later command astonishing prices in the collector's market. Today we're exploring one of the most overlooked yet fascinating coins in American history, the United States 1-cent Lincoln penny from the year 1978. At first glance, it looks just like the pennies you've probably held in your hand hundreds of times. But for collectors, the 1978 penny is far from ordinary. In fact, under the right circumstances, this small coin can be worth a staggering amount of money. Let's rewind time and set the stage. The year was 1978, a period of economic challenges in America. Inflation was rising, the dollar was struggling, and the cost of living was on the minds of many Americans. Yet, throughout all of this, the Lincoln cent remained a constant presence. The penny had already been in circulation for nearly 70 years, and it was as much a part of daily life as it was a symbol of tradition. By 1978, the coin was still being produced in huge quantities, but like every year of minting, some issues and details make certain examples far more valuable than others. The obverse, or front, of the 1978 penny continues the iconic design by Victor David Brenner. Abraham Lincoln's profile faces right, showing a determined expression that has inspired Americans since 1909, when the coin first debuted to honor the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Above his head sits the phrase, "In God We Trust," while the word "liberty" appears to the left. To the right, the date 1978 is stamped along with the mint mark, which is a small but critical detail. That mint mark, whether it's a D for Denver, an S for San Francisco, or no mark at all for Philadelphia, can significantly influence the rarity and value of the coin. On the reverse side, designed by Frank Gasparo, stands the Lincoln Memorial. This design replaced the beloved wheat penny reverse in 1959 and was used until 2008. It may seem simple, but the Lincoln Memorial design is packed with symbolism. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated figure of Abraham Lincoln inside the memorial, making the penny one of the only circulating coins in U.S. history to feature the same person on both sides. Surrounding this grand monument are the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and, of course, 1 cent, at the bottom. Now here's where things get interesting for collectors. The majority of 1978 pennies were struck for circulation and endured decades of heavy use. Most are scratched, tarnished, and worn down to the point where they hold only face value. But a tiny percentage have survived in extraordinary condition. These are coins that somehow avoided years of wear, retaining their sharp details, clean surfaces, and original mint luster. Coins in this pristine state are what collectors call uncirculated or mint state, and their value can be dramatically higher than those that saw everyday use. Beyond condition, there are other factors that boost the desirability of the 1978 penny. Proof coins, struck at the San Francisco Mint, were created with exceptional care and feature mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. When preserved in flawless condition, proof pennies can attract serious attention from collectors. In addition, error coins from 1978 are highly sought after. Minting mistakes such as double dies, off-center strikes, or planchet errors transform an otherwise ordinary penny into a rare and unique piece. These errors are like fingerprints, no two are exactly alike, and collectors are willing to pay high premiums for them. The 1978 penny also carries significance as part of the broader story of American coinage. Just a few years later, in 1982, the mint would change the composition of the penny from primarily copper to copper-plated zinc due to rising metal costs. That makes the 1978 issue one of the final years of the classic copper-based penny. For collectors who value history, this adds another layer of importance. It's not just a coin, it's a piece of America's economic story. What keeps collectors excited is the possibility of discovering one of these hidden treasures. Imagine sifting through an old jar of coins, a family collection, or even receiving a handful of change at a store, and finding a penny that turns out to be worth thousands. It has happened before, and it can happen again. That thrill of discovery keeps the hunt alive, and the 1978 penny continues to surprise collectors with its potential value. Today, we're taking a closer look at a coin that many people might dismiss as ordinary pocket change, but in reality, it holds a fascinating story and the potential for tremendous value. We are talking about the Lincoln 1-cent penny from the year 1971. It's a coin you may have seen countless times, but when we look deeper, it reveals secrets that could make collectors' eyes light up with excitement. Let's begin by traveling back to 1971. The United States was in the middle of an era of change. The Vietnam War was still ongoing, the economy was shifting, and the nation was moving into a decade full of cultural transformation. During this time, the penny was still an everyday necessity, used constantly in stores, vending machines, and daily life. What most people didn't realize, though, is that within the sea of pennies struck that year, some special examples would later become treasures worth far more than their face value. On the obverse of the 1971 penny, we see the iconic design by Victor David Brenner that has graced the coin since 1909. Abraham Lincoln's profile faces right, his features strong and noble, symbolizing leadership and resilience. Above his head sits the motto, "In God We Trust." To the left, the word "Liberty" is clearly inscribed, and to the right is the date, 1971, accompanied by a mint mark. That mint mark is an important detail, it tells us where the coin was struck. A D means Denver, an S means San Francisco, and no mint mark means it came from Philadelphia. These tiny letters may seem unimportant, but for collectors, they can mean the difference between an ordinary coin and a highly valuable rarity. Turning to the reverse side, designed by Frank Gasparo, we see the Lincoln Memorial in all its detail. Introduced in 1959 to replace the wheat ears reverse, the memorial design shows a grand symbol of American unity and strength. If you look closely, you'll even see the small image of Lincoln himself seated inside, making the penny unique among U.S. coins by showing the same person on both sides. Surrounding the memorial are the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and, at the bottom, 1 cent. Now, why is the 1971 penny so fascinating to collectors? It comes down to rarity, condition, and unique varieties. While the U.S. Mint produced millions of these coins, most were spent, circulated, and worn down through decades of use. But a small percentage survived in extraordinary condition. These are the coins that somehow avoided scratches, dents, and tarnish, retaining their original mint luster and sharp detail. Collectors call these coins uncirculated or mint state, and they are highly prized. The difference in value between a circulated penny and an uncirculated one can be massive, but there's more to the story. The 1971 Lincoln penny has some notable varieties that excite collectors. The most famous is the double die obverse, where the inscriptions and design elements appear double due to a mistake during the minting process. This error is highly sought after, and when found in excellent condition, it can dramatically increase the value of the coin. Imagine discovering a penny in your collection where the date or the word "Liberty" looks doubled. Such an error could transform a common coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Proof coins from the San Francisco Mint also play a role in the 1971 penny story. These coins were struck with extra care, using polished dies to create mirror-like finishes and sharp details. Collectors who own flawless proof examples know that their coins are not just currency but miniature works of art. When preserved properly, proof coins can command prices far beyond their face value. The 1971 penny also represents an important point in the history of American coinage. Just over a decade later, in 1982, the mint would change the composition of pennies from mostly copper to copper-plated zinc due to rising metal costs. That makes earlier pennies like the 1971 issue more attractive to collectors who appreciate the traditional copper-based coinage. It's a reminder of how even small coins can reflect larger economic decisions in American history. What makes the world of coin collecting so exciting is the element of discovery. People have found rare pennies in old jars, inherited collections, or even spare change from everyday purchases. To think that something so ordinary could hold hidden value keeps collectors searching and dreaming. The 1971 penny embodies this excitement perfectly. It's a coin that could be worth only a cent or, under the right conditions, an absolute fortune. Today we're going to shine a spotlight on one of the most intriguing and collectible coins from America's rich past, the Lincoln 1-cent penny from the year 1966. At first glance, it might look like just another penny you could find in a drawer, but as we dig deeper, you'll see why this little coin carries so much importance and why collectors all over the world keep a close eye out for special examples of it. To understand why the 1966 penny is so fascinating, let's step back into history. The mid-1960s were a turbulent and transformative time for the United States. The country was dealing with social change, economic challenges, and a shift in the way coins were being produced. The years 1965 to 1967 were especially unusual in American coinage because the U.S. Mint temporarily removed mint marks from all coins. This was done in response to a serious coin shortage at the time. People had begun hoarding coins, especially silver ones, because of their rising metal value. In order to discourage this hoarding and get more coins back into circulation, the mint made the unusual decision to strike coins without any mint marks for those years. That makes the 1966 penny very unique. Unlike most other years where you might see a D for Denver, an S for San Francisco, or no mint mark for Philadelphia, in 1966 every penny was struck without a mint mark, regardless of which facility produced it. For collectors, this detail alone sets the coin apart. It's not just about the design but also about the historical circumstances that influenced its creation. Speaking of design, the obverse of the 1966 penny features the enduring portrait of Abraham Lincoln by Victor David Brenner. Since 1909, Lincoln's strong and thoughtful profile has been a symbol of American resilience and unity. Above Lincoln's head are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left is "Liberty," and to the right sits the date, 1966, standing proudly as a marker of its era. On the reverse, we find Frank Gasparo's depiction of the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had only been introduced a few years earlier in 1959. This replaced the classic wheat penny design and gave the coin a fresh identity. The Lincoln Memorial reverse is full of symbolism and careful detail. In fact, if you look closely with a magnifying glass, you can even see a tiny engraving of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial itself. That means this coin is one of the only U.S. coins to feature the same individual on both the front and the back. The inscriptions, "United States of America, E Pluribus Unum," and "1 cent," frame the memorial, completing the design. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1966 penny truly special in the eyes of collectors. First, there's the matter of condition. Pennies are small, they pass through countless hands, and they easily become scratched, worn, or discolored. Because of this, finding a 1966 penny in pristine, uncirculated condition is much rarer than it sounds. Coins that still shine with their original mint luster, sharp details, and no visible damage are highly prized. Then there's the world of varieties and errors. Even though mint marks were absent in 1966, errors could and did occur during production. Double dies, misstrikes, off-center strikes, and planchet flaws are just some of the types of minting mistakes that make certain 1966 pennies unique. For collectors, these errors are not defects, they're treasures. They represent one-of-a-kind pieces that stand out from the millions of ordinary coins, and because they are so rare, they can command astonishing prices in the marketplace. Proof coins are another fascinating part of the 1966 penny story. These specially made coins were struck with extra care, using polished dies to create sharp, mirror-like finishes. While the mint had suspended the regular proof coin program during this time, it produced special mint sets instead. Coins from these sets, when preserved carefully, can be worth far more than their everyday counterparts. Another reason the 1966 penny is important is its place in the broader timeline of American coinage. It sits right in the middle of a major transition period. The U.S. was phasing out silver coins, experimenting with new metal compositions, and making adjustments to the way coins were distributed to the public. The penny, though made of copper, was part of this larger story of economic change and adaptation. For collectors who appreciate history, the 1966 penny is not just a small coin but a symbol of resilience in a time of uncertainty. What excites people most about the 1966 penny, however, is the possibility that an ordinary-looking coin might actually be worth far more than its face value. Collectors know that hidden gems often show up in the most unexpected places. It could be in a jar of old coins sitting in the attic, in a roll of pennies from the bank, or even in loose change from years ago. Stories continue to circulate about people who thought they had just another penny, only to discover that they were holding a small fortune in their hands. And now we arrive at the question everyone has been waiting for: just how much can a 1966 penny be worth? While the vast majority are worth only a cent or slightly more, rare examples in flawless condition, especially those with unique errors or special qualities, have amazed collectors at auctions. If you are lucky enough to own one of these rare and extraordinary coins, its value can climb all the way up to $94,000.